World of Warfare presents the Battle of Java Sea.
It's a long one down to around the 3-yard line. Ward Cup takes it. He's cutting up to his left. He's over the 10. Nice block there by Lehman. Cup still going. He's up to the 25. And now he's hit and hit hard about the 27-yard line. Bruiser Kennard made the tackle. We interrupt this broadcast and bring you this important bulletin from the United Press.
Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced. The attack also was made on all naval and military activities on the principal island of Oahu.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
In the weeks following Pearl Harbor, the American nation mobilized for war, sending young men halfway around the world in all directions to the European, Asian Pacific, North African, and Mediterranean theaters, each tasked with dramatically different fighting conditions. American men and women fought to liberate not only the occupied countries, but ultimately the oppressors themselves, Germany and Japan. Pearl Harbor wasn't the only target the Japanese went after on December 7th, for their expansionary plans were well organized in advance of their objective of controlling all or part of Asia and Oceania. Part of a larger coordinated offensive, on the same day, Japan attacked the U.S. territories of Guam in the Philippines and the British territories of Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaya, as well as an invasion force which quickly swept through Thailand. By late February of 1942, the Japanese Empire was in the triumphant phase of its expansionist campaigns in the Pacific, now in control of most of the western Pacific basin. They had crushed the British in Hong Kong, Malaya, Borneo, and Singapore by early February, along with the vital supply port of Rabaul at the tip of New Britain. In desperate need of fuel, the Japanese now set their sights on the Dutch East Indies, in particular, the rich oil fields of Sumatra and Java. Advancing from their base in the Palau Islands, the Japanese first capture Sarawak and the southern Philippines, before seizing bases in eastern Borneo and the northern Celebes. During their advance, Japanese troop convoys are screened by destroyers and battle cruisers, supported by swarms of fighters operating from each captured base, as the invasion fleet steams southward through the Makassar Strait into the Molucca Sea. In opposition to the invasion force steams a small Allied force made up of Dutch, American, British, and Australian warships, who initially attacked the invasion convoy at the Makassar Strait, inflicting little impact on the convoy's push into Borneo, where on February 13th they capture the major port of Palembang in eastern Sumatra. On the night of February 19th, the Allies attacked the Japanese invasion force off Bali in the Battle of Badung Strait, while that same night, the Japanese launched 2 carrier-based air raids on Darwin, Australia, rendering an Allied naval supply base useless. As a Japanese amphibious force under the command of Rear Admiral Takeo Takagi steams across the Java Sea for a planned invasion of Java, on February 27th, the Allies' Eastern Strike Force, under the command of Dutch Rear Admiral Karel Doorman, sails northeast from Surabaya to intercept the Japanese, which is quickly spotted by a Japanese float plane. Upon learning of the Allies' position, the Japanese steam 2 abreast toward the Allied force, before being attacked by land-based and highly inaccurate Dutch aircraft and B-17 bombers, who have little impact on the Japanese force. Locating the Allied fleet at 15:48 hours, at a distance of 31,600 yards, Dorman aboard his flagship Dorado turns his fleet west for a parallel course with the enemy. Relying on suboptimal optics systems and no radar, at 1600 hours, spotters on the HMS Electra relocate the Japanese fleet at a range of 16,000 yards before Dorman orders every ship in his force to fire their guns at the Jitsu without a single shell hitting its mark. The Naka and her screen of destroyers returns fire at 24,000 yards with the same result as the Electra. Frustrated by ineffective gunfire, the Naka and several Japanese destroyers fire 43 torpedoes at 15,000 yards, and while a few explode after running a few thousand yards, none find pay dirt. Fed up at this point, Takagi orders all his ships to move into close range and charge the enemy head-on. The Japanese battlecruiser Haguro focuses her gunfire on the Dutch light cruiser Dorado, striking her with an 8-inch shell that explodes Dorado's auxiliary engine room, igniting a fire that kills one crewman and injures 6 others. A second shell from Haguro rips through the unarmed portion of Dorado, but fails to explode. Aboard his flagship Nachi, Takagi fires upon the heavy cruiser USS Houston with 2 8-inch guns, the first punching through Houston's bow, while the second one holes her to stern, the later rupturing an oil tank. Other shells explode less than 3 yards off Houston's port side, which manages to rupture many of her seams. Takagi then orders 7 of his destroyers to close in for more accurate torpedo strikes, prompting Electra and Dorado to fire upon the advancing line of destroyers. One of Electra's 4.7-inch shells hits the lead Japanese destroyer, Takitsukaze, setting off a trail of thick white smoke that blinds a Matsukaze, who steams just behind her. Moments later, Amatsukaze suffers a near-miss strike from Dorado that lightly damages her hull before driving a wave of water through her bridgeworks. The column of Japanese destroyers then unleashes 56 torpedoes from 6,000 yards, yet again finding nothing but open ocean. As the Allied fleet begins defensive maneuvers, the Haguro switches fire from Dorado to the HMS Exeter, who in turn engages the enemy at a range of 22,000 yards. Gunnery from the Exeter is poor to pathetic, managing only a straddle by the 8th salvo, followed by a salvo from Haguro that obliterates the British heavy cruiser. While Haguro's first salvo on the Exeter fails to explode, a second hit from Haguro's 8-inch guns rips through Exeter's engine room, destroying 6 of her 8 boilers, while killing 40 men. Limping away from the fight at a mere 5 knots of forward speed, Dorman's fleet responds erratically due to language barriers and communication failures. And as the Houston, Perth, and Java begin shadowing the crippled Exeter, Dorado charges alone at the enemy fleet before coming about to retreat against impossible odds. An hour into the engagement, the Battle of Java Sea remains an unconvincing stalemate as the British destroyers Jupiter, Encounter, and Electra join the chaotic retreat behind the badly wounded Exeter. Haguro fires a spread of 8 torpedoes at the retreating Allied ships, again finding nothing but open ocean. Ironically, as the impasse continues, 15 minutes after Haguro launched a torpedo from extreme range, the Dutch destroyer Courtinier breaks apart and sinks with a loss of 66 men, making the unlikely strike quite possibly the longest-range torpedo hit in the annals of naval history. As the British destroyers attempt to cover the crippled Exeter, the Japanese destroyers Asagumo and Minigumo fire on Royal Navy J-class destroyers Jupiter and Encounter, causing minor damage to both ships with near-miss strikes. The close-range battle between Asagumo and Electra, by contrast, leaves Asagumo temporarily dead in the water, killing 5 seamen while injuring 16 others, before Asagumo opens fire with a hail of 5-inch shells that destroy Electra's ANX turrets, engine room, communication room, and electrical power generators, at the same time setting the ship ablaze. After Electra fires 8 desperate torpedoes at her opponent to no avail, the Minigumo joins the Asagumo to pepper the crippled ship with close-range gunfire, forcing Electra's crew to abandon ship before she slips beneath the ocean surface. After nearly 2 hours of fighting, Dorman's ships have inflicted little damage on the enemy, while his own fleet has paid a severe price, convincing him to cut his losses and retreat towards Surabaya, leading Takagi to believe that the fight had come to a close. After nightfall, however, Dorman's ships do an about-face for a second engagement with the enemy, allowing the fleet to rescue survivors from the sunken Courtiniere in their return trip across the battlefield. Mayhem follows mayhem when the 4 American destroyers find themselves low on fuel and out of torpedoes, forcing them to retire to Surabaya, while the Encounter becomes separated from the remaining fleet, forcing her to retire as well. Dorman's failing luck worsens at 21:25 hours when his lone remaining destroyer, the Jupiter, strikes a mine and sinks, killing 84 and leaving Dorman with only 1 heavy cruiser, the Houston, and 3 light cruisers, the Dorada, Java, and Perth. Despite Dorman's resolve to bring the fight to the Japanese, one of Takagi's float planes has been tracking the fleet the entire time. Believing he has secured a definitive victory over the enemy, Takagi aligns his fleet in post-battle formation as the crew of Asagumo makes temporary repairs after her gun battle with the Electra, and after her engine allows her to regain cruising speed. The Asagumo retires from the formation with Minigumo standing in as her escort. When the Haguro and Nachi come to full stop to recover their float planes, Takagi is shocked to learn that the Allies have turned back to re-engage. Refueling one of his float planes, Takagi sends it aloft to track the enemy fleet, while the Haguro and Nachi move to full speed to engage the enemy yet again. Thanks to Japan's superior optical systems to those of the Allies, just before midnight, the Japanese catch sight of the enemy force at long range, closing in to a range of 16,000 yards before engaging the Allies. Low on ammunition for their primary guns, Takagi opts for a stealthy torpedo attack, which sees Nachi fire 8 while Haguro fires 4. Taking evasive action at 23:32, Dorada escapes injury while one of Nachi's torpedoes blows out the Java's stern, igniting the magazine to Java's 5.9-inch main guns, which in turn sinks the ship in under 2 minutes, taking 507 lives with only 19 survivors. 4 minutes later, one of Haguro's torpedoes strikes Dorman's flagship, the Dorada, which knocks out the ship's power as flooding and fire envelop the cruiser. Haguro's torpedo strike kills the majority of Dorada's damage control crew, while her loss of power leaves the remaining crewmen little means of controlling the rapidly spreading fire. Listing dangerously to port, over a period of 3 hours, worsening fires and flooding overwhelm the ship, which eventually capsizes and sinks at a loss of 367 men, including Admiral Dorman and Captain Eugene Lacombe. According to survivors aboard Dorada, shouts of banzai could be heard from the decks of both Haguro and Nachi, as Japanese sailors danced in celebration, while Takagi, quite aware that both the Java and Dorada have suffered fatal damage, steams away from the battlefield to help reinforce the invasion convoy. With Dorman now dead, the remaining Allied warships break off from the fight to flee for safety, leaving the Dutch East Indies in the hands of their Japanese invaders. The Battle of Java Sea represents yet another defeat for the Allies, who have seen nothing but defeat in every engagement since the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, leaving Allied war planners with high anxiety over the possible occupation of Australia by Japan, which would cut off their vital supply ports at Brisbane, Fremantle, Townsville, and Cairns. The Battle of Java Sea is followed by the equally disastrous Battle of Sunda Strait and the Second Battle of Java Sea, which effectively eradicates the Dutch surface fleet from Asian waters. The loss of Java and Sumatra also hands the Japanese the world's fourth largest oil-producing region of its time, adding greatly to Japan's expansionist objectives. At the same time, leaving Allied morale badly shaken by so many relentless and painful defeats.